Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I am your host, Mark Gabberti, CEO and founder of Content Marketing Plaza, bringing you 3 new episodes each week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Now, if your breakthrough is to become an influencer who makes money doing what you love, we recently opened up the Advanced Influencer Mastermind. You can learn more about that at contentmarketingplaza.com/mastermind, which will be in the show notes. But going into this episode, we have a very special guest who has played in the NFL. He is a Super Bowl champion. He's also played in the Rose Bowl. Now he is a motivational speaker and certified master neuro-linguistic programming practitioner who helps people get out of their own way, overcome bad habits and thought patterns that do not serve their life agendas, and he helps people create their own custom-designed, fulfilling lives. Today's guest, he has guested before on episode 300. He now returns for episode 353 of the show. So today's guest is none other than Chukky Okobi. Chukky, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be back. I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Chukky, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. One thing that will be different about this show, actually, I'm going to be giving the mic to my brother Michael. He has been involved with me from the very beginning with my business. He has his own business where he does basically done-for-you services for social media. If you're looking to that, go to him. But Michael will pretty much be leading us in this interview, and he's got a bunch of awesome questions that I'm sure we're going to get a lot of awesome insights.
All right, awesome. Let's get into it, Mike.
Thank you, Chukky. Hello, Breakthrough Success listeners. Here today we have an individual with quite a long list of credentials, and I just wanted to allow you to familiarize the listeners by going from your story of just starting out in your career to ultimately succeeding at the highest level of your profession.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's kind of funny when I think about it. You know, it all really started back in the mid-'80s, like 1986. You know, I was about 7 years old, and I remember going outside every day with just kids in the neighborhood playing different sports. My mom was a single parent, wasn't really involved in my extracurricular activities. Sports was just something that, when I thought about it, something I really wanted to do. And, you know, you can probably see the scene now, just a bunch of kids outside playing different sports, wearing their favorite teams, their favorite players' jerseys. And sometimes we play street hockey in the alley behind my house, or we played most of the time. My first love was baseball, and we play baseball all the time. And, you know, it was really at that point in time looking up to the people who I saw as doing things that I thought were significant. I mean, as a 7-year-old, all I saw was athletes, you know, in the arena with thousands of people cheering them on. And that was a feeling that I wanted for myself. So I decided at that point I was going to be a professional athlete. And, you know, at different points in time, you run into different things on your way to creating the life experience you want for yourself. And, you know, I had my fair share of obstacles that I ended up finding ways to overcome. In high school, I went to a boarding school in New York, and I wasn't very highly recruited. The school I went to is called Trinity Pauling. It's in Dutchess County, New York, about an hour north of New York City. And it's not a football factory. It's not a haven for athletes who are looking to play professional sports, although I was the first, well, not the first athlete. There were other professional athletes, but I was the most recent prominent professional athlete out of Trinity Pauling. And since then, there have been a few others. And so I had to figure out a way to gain recognition, you know, not playing at a highly touted high school football program. What I did was I wrote a bunch of letters one night to every single Division I football coach in America. And long story shorter, since I know we only have limited time here, I ended up writing and reaching out to every single school in America and only got one scholarship offer. And that scholarship offer was to Purdue University, which is where I played college football, and from 1997 to 2000. And in those 4 years is when I first got introduced to neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. At a point in time in 1997, We had just switched coaches at Purdue, and I was only given one scholarship offer, and the coach that gave me that offer was now gone. So if you can imagine how I might be feeling at this point, being 18 years old, many miles from home in West Lafayette, Indiana, and the person who believed in me is now gone. It's kind of like that feeling of like a kid being lost in the mall. If we've all either witnessed that or been that kid before, so I'm sure you can imagine how I might have been feeling. But in that moment, I decided that I needed to do something to gain a competitive advantage. And I went to a bookstore near campus, and I found a book. And God honest truth, the title of the book that I found, since I did not know exactly what I was looking for in this bookstore, but the title of the book that intrigued me was The Secret to Creating Your Future. It was the title of the book. It was written by Dr. Tad James, and it was a book on NLP. And so I started reading it and getting into a lot of the concepts, and I understood it pretty easily, very quickly, and realized that there were certain principles in there that I could apply in my own daily life. And I started to do that as a college freshman in '97. And as a result of applying some of the same principles, NLP principles, which my company's called Basic Instructions. I call the Basic Instructions to Creating the Life That You Want. I started to implement these things as an 18-year-old kid. Long story short, in 1997, with our new coach at that time, Joe Tiller, I was the sole freshman starter on that football team, a freshman class that included Drew Brees. So I actually started 4 years, from 97 to 2000, and Drew started 3 years. Now, I'm not saying I'm better than Drew Brees, but if you say it, I'll let it go.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I had a spectacular college football experience, and I went to 4 bowl games, including the Rose Bowl. I played in the Hula Bowl All-Star Game, the official NCAA All-Star Game in Maui. After my senior year, I was one of 300 eligible players to be invited to the NFL Combine, and I ended up getting drafted by my hometown team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And all of this really came down to a lot of the principles that I teach now with what I do as a NLP mindset programmer and working with clients to help them create the life that they want. It's just interesting how, a lot of times there's so many highly accomplished people, athletes, different professionals, CEOs, and everyone's got a story. And what I find most interesting is it's typically not the thing that you think that they did that got them where they wanted to go, because NLP, what I teach now, is really learning how to use your mind and direct your mind, use the most powerful source in nature, which is the human mind, and use it to your advantage, since we all have one.
I tell you something, that's the amount of letters you wrote and the persistence involved in sending those things out. No wonder you were excellent at football. You have incredibly strong hands to write all those letters. And
yeah.
You were like Seuss, Dr. Seuss, rejected by a bunch of different publishers, but when he was accepted, like you were in that instance, it really did click and go to that next level. So I commend you for the effort that went into that.
You definitely get it. See, the thought process back then, when I was doing this, when I was writing these letters, I was 16, and, there's 100 some odd schools that I, were at the level at which I believed I needed to play. But at the end of the day, you can only play at one. So it really doesn't matter if 100 people reject you. And so I think a lot of times people let the emotion of being rejected or disappointment of not being able to impress certain people, and especially as young men, we understand sometimes, like if you're trying to get a girl's attention and you fail, like you try to talk to a girl and she doesn't want to talk to you, that sometimes doesn't feel very good, but you realize that there's billions of women on this planet. And so to me, it's the same principle that, even though I tried my best to contact and connect with every single school, whether it was Nebraska or Florida State or Southern Cal, I could only play at one of them. So it's important to be able to let go of the disappointment of feeling rejection, for lack of a better word, and continue to stay focused on what it is you're trying to accomplish. And for me, like I said, back in the 80s, I decided I wanted to be a professional. So it was just a matter of getting one of those schools to say yes. And just like you said, my persistence is what got me that one yes. And that's all I needed.
And in reference to that persistence and the discipline necessary for success, if you were to advise somebody on 3 daily habits to perform to achieve their goal, 3 things that they would do without fail every 24 hours, what would be your 3 go-to habits?
Number 1 would be meditation. And the thing is, with meditation is, it's really an opportunity for you to sit and be alone with your own mind and get in rapport with yourself, understanding, what's going on within you, being at peace, because we're, as human beings, we're constantly moving or constantly thinking, constantly acting and reacting to things. It's important for you to take a moment to just kind of balance yourself out and make sure that your mind is clear going into each and every day. I do meditation every single day. I have done it every single day since I first learned about it, way back when I read Dr. James's book, and I've been doing it ever since. So that's 97. What year is it now? So this is 22 years almost.
Dang.
So, every single day. And it's really understanding that you are the only person living your experience. And so it's important that you get to know you as best as you can. So that would be the number 1 thing. Number 2, I believe some sort of physical activity is important. I've been working out consistently since I was about 12 years old. So for me, it's just I don't feel right if I don't do some sort of physical activity. But there is a connection between your mind, your body, and your energy. And, if you neglect your mind, it's going to take a toll on you physically. If you neglect yourself physically, it's going to take a toll on your energy. And so in order to be as balanced as you possibly can, it's important to get regular physical activity. And it seems silly, but the people that I know who aren't necessarily athletes, who are very high achievers, people I've worked with in the music industry, in performing arts, acting, business, and with coaches that I've had, particularly the person that jumps to mind is Bill Cowher, that I played with the Steelers for 6 years. And here's a man who's working 80 to 100 hours a week, but I can't remember a day I didn't see him getting some sort of physical activity in order to make sure that he was at his best to be able to do his job the best he can. So I would say meditation and physical activity are very, very important. The third thing I would say is reading. And, especially for you guys with, your education and whatnot, sometimes it seems a little much to say that you should be reading something else other than what's required readings for your studies. But the thing is, we all only have 24 hours in a day. There's only so much, there's a lot of information out there that can be beneficial to you. And there's a lot of things that you can learn, need to learn, and you're responsible for all your own learning. Even if you think about school and the way school is, the teacher's just giving you the information, how you retain it, how you write it down, how you study. That's all on you. And so that's what you're learning to do. And when you finish your education and you're at a different point in your life and you're moving forward towards your bigger goals, it's important that you continue to exercise your mental capabilities, your analytical capabilities by continuing to learn things that are pertinent to what it is that you do and continuing to self-educate yourself. And you got to think, anything you're trying to accomplish with the billions and billions and billions of human beings that have come through history, there's somebody else out there who had the same difficulties, same challenges that you had, and they probably dedicated their life to writing a book about it. While a lot of us are sitting here wondering, well, I don't know what to do, you realize that the library is free. So, but people are sitting here wondering, well, what do I do? I don't know what to do. Where do I turn? Well, library cards free, and really only about 3% of Americans have one.
Wow.
And you realize how much valuable information there is in the library. And so I would say physical activity, meditation, and continuing self-education I think are the biggest three things I would say for anybody looking to achieve at a high level, at a Super Bowl champion level of success, regardless of if it's sports, medicine, education, business, real estate. I would say those three things are important.
Well, thank you for those. And to our listeners, take those to your life, instill and install them as soon as you can. And in reference to your NFL career, to cover that base, knowing what you now know about career achievement, your entire understanding of it, all the things you've learned, if you had to start again, if you had to start from scratch, would you have done anything differently in your NFL career, or would you have said, you know what, I'm going to play it the same way?
Well, the only thing I'll say is, in general, when people think about their journey in life, you always think about things that you wish happened different. That, if I knew now what I knew then, that kind of dynamic. But I wouldn't change anything, and here's why. When we think about our past disappointments, past mistakes, past losses, or failures, if you will, a lot of times the things that come to mind are the emotions of losing or the emotions of failure. But failure is how we learn. And I'll give you an example to explain what I mean by that. And I think about my niece, Patricia. She's older now, but I remember when she was a baby and before she had learned how to walk, and playing with her, I would always, she would stand up on her own too and balance on my hands. And you ever just see that, true joy and happiness in a baby's face? And so when she's standing there on her own too, she just had this energy, this happiness, and this is something that she knew she wanted to do. She sees other people doing it, and standing and walking was something that this baby clearly wanted to do. And so I remember when my older brother Tony was telling me the story, but when she finally decided that she was going to learn how to learn this new skill. And you know how it is, the baby, she balanced herself up on the coffee table. And so now she's standing up and without any help, and without any help from any other person. And that's pretty cool. So she's getting closer to her goal. But in order to walk, in order to do what everyone else is doing, she has to let go. So she eventually lets go of the coffee table, and she's balancing there and, swaying, slightly, because standing is a new thing at this point.
Right.
And she decides, dare I take a step and take this a step further? And so she takes a step, and then she takes another step, and then she fell down. Well, this walking thing is something she really wants to do. So she gets herself back up, and she, lets go of the table, takes another step, and she falls down again. And she's still determined that she wants to do what she sees other people doing. So she gets back up, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, 4 step, fell down again. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. Let's just imagine for a second that my niece, in this moment, after she just fell, after trying numerous times, let's just imagine her thought process went something like this. I tried, man. I tried 3 times. You know what? I'm just not going to be able to do what I want. I just can't have what I want. I failed. I can't. I tried and I failed. I'm just not going to be able to do what other people can do. But you know what? I should be grateful because the stroller is comfortable, it's convenient, and you know what? It's just a stroller life for me. But obviously, she didn't do that. And neither did you or me, because we've all been there. So why is it that when we get older, we start to think back on the past failures and we let that stop us from moving forward? Where do we learn that? Because when you learn how to walk, you didn't do that.
Right.
Just think about it. And so to me, when I think about my past career, there are always things that you wish you would have done better, because now I'm wiser than I was when I was 22, 23, 26 years old. I'm a lot wiser. So it would have been really convenient to know these things back then. However, I had to go through what I went through to be this wise today. So in order to continue to evolve as a human being and evolve professionally, the mistakes, the missteps, the disappointments of the past are necessary. And so I wouldn't change anything.
Well, that is a great example and answer, and adults learning from children. Go figure. And how appropriate, if at that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And to the individual who is out there, maybe they're okay falling over, and maybe they've fallen over a couple times. They're trying to get to where they want to go, and they're facing a little bit of pushback, a little difficulty. If you could get them to repeat one thought in their mind over and over and over again to keep them upbeat, what would that thought be?
That is a good question. What would that thought be? That's an interesting one. Obviously, to me, it's something that whatever you're going to repeat to yourself, that's what programming is. It's programming your own mind. So I would say right off the bat, the first thing that pops into my head is, I will act now. I will act now. And you know what? I'll go back to a lighter example, because I tend to get deep. But yeah, I think about when I was like a teenager, or maybe like in college, and I see a girl that I want to approach and talk to, and you start sitting there thinking like, does she like guys taller than me, or does she have a boyfriend? And you start thinking all these things, and before you know it, you hyped yourself up to go over there and talk to her, and then she's not even there anymore. And it's all the thinking, the hesitation, wondering what would happen. Am I going to fail? Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Thinking about what happened last time. You need to act. It doesn't matter if you fail. Again, we've already discussed that. You're going to learn something. And there's an NLP presupposition in NLP. And the saying, what it says is that there is no such thing as failure, only feedback. That's all it is feedback, letting you know what if you didn't achieve your outcome. All that lets you know is that there's some adjustments you need to make. It's not so much that you failed, it's just feedback, and that you're learning exactly how to get what you want. And if you didn't fail, you're not going to get the lesson. So I would say, if you're going to repeat something to yourself, that thought would be, I will act now.
I will act now. 4 excellent words. That's not only a great quote card, that's a great philosophy. So thank you for sharing that with the listeners. And here's another, if we were to frame another example here. If there was a time when you were going into a game where, let's say, people had the odds completely in favor of the other team, like they had you losing the game before you even started the game. When the world is counting you out, how can you stay positive and motivated?
The biggest thing is understanding that what other people say, that's their interpretation of the situation. Now, you can listen to what other people are saying, and you can be hypnotized with their negativity if you want to. But this is where they're going back to getting to know yourself and understanding yourself and believing in yourself and listening to yourself first and foremost. One of the big things that I always ask when I'm working with clients, especially young athletes or younger people, entrepreneurs and people working in the corporate structure, is I'll ask them, if we get to election day and, you registered to vote, how many times do they let you vote? And the answer is obvious. You get to vote once. And so then I'll ask, okay, well, then how many times do I get to vote? So, well, I only get to vote once. So then my next question to you is, so why is it that you're listening to other people's opinions when they don't get to vote any more than you do?
Right.
And at the end of the day, you can listen to them. You can take that if there's more people out there who don't see it your way. If you want to accept that as proof that you're wrong in some way, then that's your decision. But you can make the decision to just stick with your own opinion, your one vote on what you think the situation is going to be. And then if you stick to that and don't. It's not so much about blocking them out as much as just listening to yourself and get into the habit of listening to yourself. You get one vote. Now, I'll put it like this. If you come across someone that gets to vote twice, you might want to listen to them. But you're not going to find that person. Who is that? You are as important. Your opinion is as valid. Your perspective is as valid as anything out there, as anybody else. It doesn't matter who says it. It doesn't matter if it's the president, the king of the world. It doesn't matter. Your opinion is as valid and as true as anybody else's. And so it's more about coming to terms with that fact about yourself. Always think when somebody's naysaying you or telling you that your ideas are not going to work or telling you in some way that you're not good enough, just ask yourself this question: how many votes do they get?
I agree.
That's it. And that should tell you everything you need to know.
You know what? Understood. So vote for yourself, buy into yourself.
Yep.
And relative to NFL experience and the insights that you have learned and earned from an entire career in that space, what do you think most professional football players should be doing to prepare their mind for success that they're not doing on a regular basis?
Well, I think that the biggest thing to consider is the age at which most men and women in this country are playing professional sports and where they're at in their life journey. And so I think it's, what the things that professional athletes are not doing, I think would be very similar to a lot of things that other, 20-something-year-olds, into their late 20s, early 30s may not be doing. And that is what happens over time is as we stop growing physically, like you get to how tall you're going to be, whether that's 5'7" or 6'7", and you believe that you're done developing because you're done growing physically. But the thing is, mentally and emotionally, we never really stop developing. And that's why, I mentioned before that continuing to read every single day, even if it's just a couple of pages of a good book, to develop your mind, to learn more about yourself, and to continue to develop beyond just the physical parameters of your DNA, deciding how big you're going to be. There's no limit to the mind. There's a brain, but the mind has no limits. And so that you can continue to develop that, grow that, cultivate that. And I think that sometimes you run into professional athletes who believe that, you work your whole life. Like for me, I have been trying to get to the NFL level since age 7. I didn't get there till age 22. And so at that point in time, as a 22-year-old, you can be fooled into believing that you've arrived, that you've made it to the pinnacle of your existence, when this is only the beginning. It's only the beginning. And because if you get to the NFL or Major League Baseball or to the NHL and you play there 10 years, let's say, you graduate college, you get to the NHL, you're 23 years old, you play 10 years, and now you're 33. You realize you still have about 50 years left on this planet.
Right.
And so to me, a lot of times we as a society put professional sports and celebrities, whether it be music, acting and all kinds of other things nowadays, we put them on this pedestal as if that's the pinnacle of achievement. But that's just the pinnacle of what we call achievement, and that there are bigger things going on in your world right now that are bigger than the Super Bowl, that are bigger than, the Grammys or whatever else might be going on that society and the media is telling us is important. But what's more important when you think about it is you creating the life experience for yourself that you want. Like, how do you want life to feel? What impact do you want to have on the world? What legacy do you want to leave behind when you pass? And the way I've always looked at it is the fact that I played for the Purdue Boilermakers and played for the Pittsburgh Steelers and won championships at the college and professional level. All in all, if I live to be 88 years old, that should be like a footnote. Ooh. Because that's really, if you look at the entire span of my life, that's really a very small portion of it. And so it's important to remember that even if you are winning, if you will, as a young person before you start getting gray hairs and everything, just know that things are going to change, and there's still a lot more to learn.
So if I were to close caption that, the Super Bowl trophy you worked for years to get, earn, and battled to achieve will ultimately be a footnote in your life.
Yeah, if you ask me, somebody else might perceive it to be something bigger than what it actually is. But as far as all the days that I've spent on this planet, all the people that I've influenced, people that we're never going to talk about this on TV. It's never going to be, discussed in the podcast. And, those things are important to me. My impact on my community, my impact on my family, friends, and being able to inspire other people. That's way more important from my perspective than winning a football game.
Well, I give you credit for that perspective, and it's shown in the results that you've been able to achieve in multiple areas of life. And relative to examples of people to role model in those areas, if you had to pick out 3 individuals, any time frame, present, past, who would you say that you really look up to as a role model? 3 people.
Okay. Number one, I think you're going to be a little surprised, but number 1 would actually be 50 Cent.
Oh, okay.
50 Cent, and I want to talk about that one a little bit. And what a lot of people, we know things about 50. 50's been in the limelight for a lot of years, but the thing about him is here's a young man who back at in 2000, in the late 90s, early 2000, was really trying to change his life for the better and get out of the hustling game, drug dealing and whatnot, and transition into legitimate industry of music. And because of his affiliations and being involved in that world, someone tried to kill him. I mean, he got shot 9 times. That's not an accident. That's not like just catching a stray bullet. Somebody tried to end him. And so again, just like when my daughter was learning, my niece, I don't have any daughters that I know about, but my niece was learning to walk, just like that, falling down. Even somebody trying to take his life, 50 Cent, he didn't let that stop him. I mean, that's pretty significant when you think about it, and how you can go from in 2000 being almost killed, being blackballed within the industry, to the point that no labels wanted to work with him because of the violence that was associated with him.
Right.
So not only did I almost get killed, but now that I'm alive, nobody wants to work with me. And he didn't let those things stop him from achieving what he had set out to do.
Wow.
And so to me, that's why, when people ask me about, people out there that I admire the most, he's usually the first person that jumps to mind, because it goes back to understanding that it doesn't matter whoever, wielded that gun and tried to kill him. It didn't matter what they thought. It didn't matter what they wanted to do. He was going to reach the pinnacle of success in his new life, get out of the crime game. And he did that. And he did it at a very high level, as we all know. So I would say 50 Cent's definitely one person. Another person in history, I would say, is Napoleon Bonaparte. And, I think about Napoleon and, how he was able to become the first emperor of France. And there's one particular situation that comes to mind, because I tend to study historical figures. And, he was attempting to invade Italy to expand France's rule in Europe. But it was at a time of year where the Italian Alps were very difficult to cross through. And his advisors, everyone told him, you need to wait. We can't get through there. You're not going to be able to get your men through this weather, through this terrain. It's going to be difficult. And there's a quote that I remember from this particular situation that Napoleon said to his number one advisor was, For Napoleon's army, there will be no Alps.
Mm.
And what happened was he led his troops on the back of a donkey through the Italian Alps and was able to conquer the Italian Empire at that point and expand France's rule within Europe, which was a big part of his legacy as a leader, as a military leader and political leader in France. And again, it goes back to the fact that he wasn't going to let what other people who, again, only get one vote, and they're telling him that what he can't do. And he's like, listen, that you can believe what you want, but we're going and we're going to win. And they did. And so that's definitely somebody in history that jumps out at me. And the third person I'd say was actually my head coach in college, Joe Tiller. And he had just so many Joe Tiller sayings. I could go on, like we could do a whole podcast just talking about Joe Tiller. But one of my favorites was what he used to always say. He'd say this at least once every season about playing football games on the road in somebody else's stadium. And he always wanted to remind us that, no matter what happens, always remember you cannot control the crowd. You can't control the weather. You cannot control the playing surface. You can't control the referee. And you cannot control your opponent. There are only two things you can control. And that's your effort and your execution. And so, again, going back to what I said about meditating, going back to what I said about relying on yourself, is you have to focus on you and the things you can control. Because how many times in sports do you see, in a baseball game where somebody blames the umpire because his strike zone is not good enough? Like, nobody cares. You lost.
Right.
You're worrying about something that you have no control over. You say, we went to play in Indianapolis, like an indoor stadium, and it's just so loud in there we couldn't hear. Well, you can't control that. You should have prepared for that coming in, and you're going to have to figure out a way to deal with it if you want to win. And so if you notice the theme here, it's all about understanding that you're in control, that focus on the things that you can control, focus on yourself, and focus making sure that you are completely congruent and understanding that you're responsible for your success and or failure.
Well, thank you for those insights and the examples of individuals relating them to success, and very much building up a useful column of do's, in the sense that if we had a do's and don'ts article about how to succeed, a lot of what we've discussed would be in the do column. Do these things. What about if you could advise someone 3 things that you would not want to do? 3 don'ts, big don'ts. What would those be?
Okay, number 1 is acting emotionally. You don't want to do that. Because in sports, it's funny because sports is a place where you see that lesson very, very clearly. Like, think about this. In basketball, if a player or coach gets upset and starts mouthing off to the referee and says more than he would have had he been calm, what happens? Technical foul, penalized. In baseball, if you got hit by a pitch, and I totally get it because baseball's hurt, especially if it's a major league fastball coming at you. But what if you decide to get angry and rush the mound to fight the pitcher? You get ejected, penalized. I'll tell you the story from when I was on the Steelers and we were playing Monday Night Football. It was against Tampa, and we were getting beat pretty bad. And I don't remember the exact score, but I do remember the feeling of that loss back then. And there was a play that Coach Carroll wanted to challenge. And if you watch NFL football, when there's a challenge, the head coach will take his red flag out and throw it onto the field. Now, the refs that night had been acting like they were blind the whole time. So it's no surprise to me that they didn't see Coach Carroll's flag on the field. So at this point, Coach is frustrated. And you could imagine the anger just rising, and he's thinking to himself, like, we're losing this game, and now the refs aren't even paying me attention. And so in this angry state, He runs out onto the field, grabs the red flag, and proceeds to just drill the ref in the back with the red flag.
Oh.
So what do you think happened next? The yellow flags came out, penalized. And so you realize now that if you do not control your emotions, you will be penalized. Period. That's life. If you act emotionally, if you act in a state of anger, if you act when you're feeling fear, when you act when you're feeling sadness, nothing good is going to come of that. Nothing. And to me, just look at sports. That'll tell you all you need to know. Number two, thing that I would not do. One thing is you always have to understand that things, whatever the situation is that you're in, things are not always as they seem. And so what I would say, the thing you don't want to do is believe that however things are is the way it is, whether it's good or bad. Think there's one constant in life, and that's change. So you have to be aware of where you're at in this moment and what are you doing daily and where is that going to lead you in the future, because everything happens gradually then suddenly. So if you have bad habits of, let's say, not saving money or not handling your finances right, and everything's fine now because I got $50,000 in the bank, but if you have these bad habits, you realize that at some point you're going to look at that bank account and it's going to be negative.
Ooh.
But it's all based on you being aware of the impact of your day-to-day actions, having a better understanding of the overall picture instead of believing that whatever you're experiencing right now is the way it is. Even if you're, in the NFL and you're at the top of your game, that's not going to last forever. And so if you start to believe that this celebrity that you are, if you're, an A-list celebrity football player, and you believe that that's how your life is going to be forever, you're going to be sadly mistaken. And so you have to understand that this is why you want to continue to develop yourself as a human being. This is why you want to continue to grow, continue to learn. Because if you just look at the way things are, good or bad, and believe that's the way it is, you're going to be sadly mistaken. And even if the situation is not good, if you look at it and just believe that it's not good, then you start to develop a feeling that life sucks. When it really doesn't have to be like this forever. You can make a decision to learn new things, take new actions, and focus until you reach your destination. And that can start today, even if you're dead broke and unemployed, feeling like you have no options, you can start to create change just by learning new things and applying them. And so that's two things. I don't know if I have another don't do, because I tend to not focus on things that I wouldn't do. I try to always think of things in the affirmative. Thinking what should I do, what would I do, what will I do, and then act now.
Understood. Well, thank you for those two items. You just saved somebody a lot of pain and pitfalls that would have come from following that route. Okay, well then, having covered both sides, multiple careers, the constant being positive credentials throughout, if you stepped to the podium of the world and spoke into the mic and you had the attention of every person on the planet and you wanted to inform them of a master lesson for life, one master lesson, would you go with I will act now from earlier, or would it be different? What would that master lesson be?
The lesson would be that you can have whatever you want in this lifetime. Success is actually pretty simple if you know the basic instructions. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example that we're all familiar with. And I might have talked about this last time. And that would be the movie The Wizard of Oz. And, we've all seen it. Most people have seen it. And Dorothy finds herself in this crisis. And, she steps out of the house when it lands in Oz and everything's in color. And as the viewers, the first thing we see is that she has these red shoes on, these ruby slippers. So we know that as the movie goes on through this crisis, she has that tool, these shoes the whole time. And so she gets to the wizard and thinks he can solve her problem, only to find out that, again, you got to rely on yourself. But you also realize that it wasn't until she received the basic instructions of how to use those shoes that she realized how easy it was to get what she wanted. And so when I talk about whatever you want to create in this world, there is a way. And that's really the basis of what I do in my company with Basic Instructions. And that is, there are literally 4 instructions that I'll give it to you right now, that if you stick to these principles, you can have whatever you want. So basic instruction number 1 is you have to let go of the past. And when I mean let go of the past, I'm talking about the negative emotions, the limiting beliefs that you've created within yourself based on the fact that you tried in the past and failed. Just like my niece had to let go of the past, let go of the times that she fell down and continue to try to walk. And, even if the past was 5 minutes ago, even if it was yesterday, you have to let that feeling, the negative emotions, the feelings of disappointment, failure, anger, you have to let it go. Because again, if you act in those emotional states, you will be penalized. So number 1 is you have to let go of the past in order to move forward. Basic instruction number 2, you have to decide. You have to make a decision as to exactly what it is you want to accomplish, a specific destination or outcome. And the example that jumps to mind for me is thinking about being at the airport, just any airport. Most people have been to the airport and flown different places. And I just want you to think for a second, have you ever seen or heard of or been to the airport and seen a plane that got on the runway and took off right into the sky just with the simple goal of getting away from the airport? It's not necessarily going anywhere.
No, I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that. Okay. So you realize that without a specific destination, that plane stays on the ground. If you don't know what you want, how are you going to get any type of plan off the ground if you don't even know what it is you're trying to accomplish? You have to know. So you have to let go of the past, number 1. Number 2, decide exactly what you want. Create that compelling picture, the compelling future of the things you most desire, whether that's money, success in sports and business and in health and relationships. What do you want to accomplish? That's number 2. Number 3 is action. You have to do things in conjunction with that plan that you created, with that destination. You have to create the disciplines and habits and take the actions that will lead you to that destination. It's, a lot of times people will watch things like The Secret, and The Secret is great and it has a really good point. It's just that some people think that if I just sit and think positively, the positive things will happen. That's step number 2, not number 3. You have to take actions. Otherwise, that positive thinking is just going to stay in your head. So that's number 3. Number 4, basic instruction number 4 is focus. And what I mean by focus is, if you want to create positive change in your life, if you're broke right now and you want to get rich, that's not going to happen overnight. But there are actions you can take today and tomorrow and the next day. And if you continue to maintain your focus, create new disciplines, new actions, new ways of doing things, and maintain that over the next 90 days, 6 months, 6 years, 20 years, you got to maintain your focus until you get to that destination that you set. So that's simple. That's the lesson. Is success is simple if you know the basic instructions. Then instead of clicking 3 times, there's 4 things you need to do. Let go of the past. Decide on what you want your future to be specifically. Take the actions that are going to get you there, and focus each and every day until you get there. And that's it.
Essential instrumental instructions. Some would even call them basic instructions. Thank you for outlining those for us.
No problem. No problem. That's definitely the lesson I would tell the whole world.
So in closed captioning everything we've discussed across multiple industries, career paths, successfully done, and working towards your goals. Thank you for sharing these insights with our Breakthrough Success listeners. And now to summarize this, I am going to hand it off to Mark. But before I do, Chukky, thank you very much for your time. It was great speaking with you. I wish you continued success.
It's a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Well, that was certainly different. I've never listened to an interview on my show like that, to that capacity. Chukky, I know he's got a lot of info over at Basic Instructions. That will be in the show notes, markberry.com/E353. We also, now if you guys want Michael to start a podcast, let us know in the Facebook group, contentmarketingplaza.com/Facebook, or just email one of us, mark@markgilberti.com or michael@michaelgilberti.com. Definitely be interesting to see what kind of engagement that gets, because, I mean, those questions were epic. And yeah, I really enjoyed listening to that interview. Chukky, thank you once again for coming on Breakthrough Success and sharing all of your great insights with us.
Hey, it's a pleasure as always. And I'll talk to you guys again real soon.